Ladies and gentlemen, imagine this. The moment you realize someone you once trusted, someone who claimed to love you, no longer has power over your heart. Imagine the quiet strength that rises when you finally say, "I'm done, and this time I mean it." Tonight, we're diving deep into a journey few talk about. The hidden truths of the narcissist when they know you will never come back. What do they do? How do they react? And most importantly, how do you rise, reclaim your peace, and step into a power they can never touch? Stay with me, because this story is yours too. The turning point of no return is not a moment that arrives loudly or dramatically. It's quiet, almost sacred. It's that inner shift when a person realizes that going back to the narcissist would mean abandoning themselves. And for the first time, that price simply feels too high. This moment usually comes after a long emotional journey. Countless second chances, repeated cycles of hope and disappointment, and the slow erosion of self-worth. People often hang on because they believe in healing, in forgiveness, in trying one more time. But the turning point appears when the heart is finally tired of being stretched beyond its limits. It's the moment you stop asking, "What can I do to make this work?" and start asking, "What is this doing to me?" Something changes in the way you breathe. Something shifts in the way you wake up. You begin to recognize the cost of staying, your peace, your identity, your emotional safety. And this awareness doesn't shout, it whispers. But it's a whisper strong enough to move mountains. At the turning point, the illusion breaks. You see the pattern clearly. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the endless cycles of highs and lows that once felt like passion, but were really control. You realize the relationship was not a partnership, but a performance you were cast into without consent. And suddenly, you are no longer willing to play a role that diminishes who you are. This moment doesn't come with anger. It comes with clarity. You don't walk away to hurt them. You walk away to save yourself. It is the moment you finally choose your sanity, your voice, your worth. That choice becomes the doorway to a new life, one where you begin to remember who you were before the chaos and who you can become after it. And once that turning point settles into your bones, something else begins to happen. Something deeper, something almost invisible to the outside world. Because the moment you decide you're done, the moment you emotionally disconnect, that's when the narcissist feels a shift they cannot explain but instantly recognize. They sense the loss of control before you ever pack a bag or send a final message. And this leads to the second truth. Behind their confident mask, they panic. Not the kind of panic you can see. Narcissists don't scream or fall apart when they realize you're slipping away. Their fear doesn't look like fear. It looks like irritation, coldness, sudden indifference, or an odd attempt to act as if they don't care. But inside, something cracks. They feel your emotional exit long before your physical one, and it shakes the foundation of their carefully constructed identity. Because to a narcissist, losing you isn't about losing love. It's about losing supply. Losing the admiration, the attention, the emotional energy they quietly fed on. They've been so used to pulling your strings, to watching you bend and forgive, that your silence becomes louder than any argument ever was. And beneath their facade, they're terrified. Terrified of becoming irrelevant. Terrified of being exposed as ordinary. Terrified that the person who once made them feel powerful has read their own power. That hidden panic leads to a flurry of internal questions they'll never admit out loud. Why aren't they reacting? Why aren't they chasing? What if I can't get them back? This is the moment their mask tightens. They can't let the world see insecurity, so they conceal it with arrogance. But inside, they're scrambling, trying to understand how the one person they thought they'd always control slipped through their fingers the moment you chose yourself. And it's in that quiet, internal scramble, hidden behind their cool expressions and calculated confidence, that the next phase begins. Because once the narcissist feels that panic rising, once they sense the emotional cord between you loosening, they shift into subtle action, not the kind you can easily point to, not the kind that comes with apologies or accountability, but the kind designed to pull you back without ever admitting they need you. They start sending out emotional signals, small enough to deny but intentional enough to reach you. It might be a message that appears out of nowhere, simple and vague. "Hey, just checking on you." It might be a photo, a quote, or a song they know touches your memories. It could be them showing up online more often, posting things you're meant to see, or suddenly acting like the person you always wished they were. They become a subtle magician of emotional reminders, crafting little echoes of your past connection to test whether you still feel something. And they don't just stop there. They might ask mutual friends about you, knowing the news will eventually circle back. They may act unusually kind or overly composed, hoping you'll question your decision. Sometimes they even bring up your name in conversations with others, not out of sentiment, but out of strategy, because any mention of you keeps the thread alive. These small hooks are never about love. They're not about healing or reconnection. They're about checking your emotional temperature. They want to know if you can still be triggered, still be pulled, still be influenced. It's their way of seeing whether the door is truly closed or if there's a sliver of hope left for them to wedge their way back in. But the irony is, and this is the part they never understand, each small attempt only confirms how far you've grown, how deeply you've stepped into yourself, and how firmly that door has already shut. And here's where the real shift begins. Because while they're busy sending out emotional probes, testing the waters, waiting to see if you LL bite, they don't realize that something profound has already changed. Every time they toss another breadcrumb your way, expecting you to follow the old path, they were actually revealing something much bigger. The power has finally returned to you. You feel it in the quiet moments. The same message that once sent your heart racing now feels strangely empty. The familiar tactics that used to pull you back now fall flat, like echoes from a world you're no longer living in. And you start to notice something you never expected. You're not reacting the way you used to. Their attempts don't destabilize you, they clarify you. They show you how much strength you've gained in the space where their influence once lived. This is the power shift. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or declarations. It arrives in your ability to pause, to breathe, to choose yourself instead of the cycle. It arrives when you realize that you no longer need their validation to feel seen. It arrives in the stunning realization that your silence, once used by them as an opportunity to control, has now become your protection, your boundary, your freedom. And while they're trying to figure out how to pull you back into the story, you're no longer in the audience. You've stepped off the stage entirely. You're rewriting the script of your life with a voice they can no longer manipulate or mute. Their attempts to regain control become powerless the moment you recognize your own. Because once you understand that your peace is yours to protect, once you feel the strength of that emotional independence rising in you, you realize something life-changing. You're not the one losing anything, they are. And you finally remembered who you were before the chaos and who you're becoming after it. And as that power quietly settles into your spirit, something even more beautiful begins to unfold. Something the narcissist never expected, something they never prepared for. Because the moment you stop orbiting their world, you start rediscovering your own. The space that once held their chaos slowly becomes a home for clarity, and in that space, you begin the journey back to yourself. At first, it feels unfamiliar, almost like meeting a long-lost friend. You catch glimpses of the pieces you abandoned. Your laughter, your boundaries, your passions, your dreams, they rise slowly like dawn after a long night. You realize how much of yourself you gave away trying to keep the relationship alive, trying to soothe storms you didn't create, trying to earn love that should have been freely given. And now, without their emotional gravity pulling you in every direction, you finally have the freedom to breathe, to rest, to remember who you were before you were drained. This is the rediscovery of identity, the fifth transformation. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's healing in motion. You start recognizing your own voice again, and it's softer, wiser, more grounded. You find joy in small things that used to go unnoticed because you were constantly managing their moods. You begin to trust your intuition again, the very intuition they once taught you to doubt. You realize your worth is not defined by how much pain you can carry or how many times you can forgive. And with every step back into yourself, something miraculous happens. The narratives they once used to control you lose their power. The doubts they planted begin to die. You're no longer molded by their expectations. You're shaped by your own choices. And this rediscovered self, this rising version of you, is the very thing that ensures you will never return to the place that once made you forget who you are. As you step deeper into this rediscovery of yourself, something subtle yet profoundly powerful emerges. something you might not even recognize at first because it feels so different from the constant noise you left behind. It's silence, your silence. And in this stage of your healing, silence becomes more than a lack of words. It becomes a declaration of self-respect. For so long, your voice was tangled in explanations, defenses, and emotional negotiations. You were always trying to be understood, trying to clarify, trying to fix what was never yours to fix. But now, as you rebuild your identity, you no longer feel compelled to justify your boundaries or prove your pain. Silence becomes your sanctuary, the space where your clarity is protected and your energy is no longer up for debate. And while your silence may feel gentle to you, it becomes deafening to the narcissist. They're used to pulling reactions out of you, used to provoking emotions, used to hearing the sound of their influence echo through your responses. But when you stop responding, when you detach, when you choose peace over engagement, they lose their grip. Your silence tells a truth louder than any confrontation ever could. You are no longer accessible to their chaos. This silence is not empty. It's full of lessons, full of strength, full of the growing understanding that you don't need to fight for what's already ended. It's the sound of emotional liberation. And with each day you remain silent, you reinforce the boundary that protects your newfound identity. Silence becomes your victory because it shows that your healing no longer requires their involvement. You are no longer trapped in their patterns. You are no longer defined by their needs. Your silence is the evidence of your growth, the moment you stop dancing to a song that was never written for your well-being. And in this quiet, you finally hear the most important voice of all, your own. And it's in that very silence, your calm, steady, unshakable silence, that another truth begins to reveal itself. Because while you're rediscovering your center, while you're learning to breathe without their shadow in your lungs, the narcissist is confronting something they have spent their entire life running from, their deepest fear. Your silence doesn't just unsettle them, it exposes them. It forces them to face the one thing they cannot handle, irrelevance. For a narcissist, attention is oxygen, being seen, admired, needed. That's the fuel their ego feeds on. And when you stop responding, when you no longer flinch, argue, defend, or explain, they feel themselves fading out of the position they once occupied in your life. That fading is their greatest fear, because beneath the mask, beneath the arrogance and the false confidence, lies a fragile truth they will never admit. They are terrified of being ordinary, terrified of being forgotten, terrified that without someone feeding their sense of importance, they might have to face the emptiness they've been avoiding their entire existence. Your silence becomes a mirror they cannot escape. It reflects back the reality they've always tried to hide, the reality that their power was never real power. It only existed in your reaction, in your willingness to emotionally engage, and now with that gone, they're forced to recognize that the control they believed they had was only ever borrowed from your heart. This fear drives their confusion, their subtle attempts to reconnect, their quiet desperation masked as indifference. Because losing you means losing the emotional mirror that made them feel significant. But here's the part they never anticipate. When you no longer need their approval, when your silence speaks for you, they're left confronting the emptiness within themselves. While you step further and further into the fullness of who you're becoming, their secret fear becomes your secret freedom. And while they're left wrestling with that emptiness, something extraordinary begins to rise within you. Something gentle, steady, and unmistakably yours. Because the moment their fear no longer dictates your emotions, you finally create space for something you haven't felt in a long time, peace, not the fragile, temporary peace you used to cling to between their storms, but a deeper peace, the kind that settles in your chest like a soft, grounding truth. It doesn't come all at once. It arrives in small moments. You wake up one morning and realize you didn't think about them at all the night before. You sit in silence and the quiet doesn't feel threatening. It feels comforting. You walk through your day without the weight of anticipating someone else's outburst or mood swing. You begin to recognize your own rhythm again, and it feels like coming home. This peace grows in the absence of their chaos. It grows every time you choose not to respond, every time you honor your boundaries, every time you remind yourself that healing is not a race. It's a return. It's the return to the version of you who could think clearly, who could breathe deeply, who could trust themselves without second-guessing every feeling. And here's the beautiful thing. The more peace you cultivate, the more distance you naturally create. The narcissist's fear pulls them into frantic attempts to stay relevant, but your peace pulls you forward into a life where their noise no longer reaches you. That gap, created not by anger, but by healing, becomes the space where your soul begins to rest, rebuild, and rise. This inner calm is not just freedom from them, it's freedom to become yourself again. It's the quiet confidence that grows when your heart finally stops surviving and starts living. And in that moment, you understand something powerful. Peace is not what you find after losing them. Peace is what you rediscover after finding yourself. And as that peace begins to settle into every corner of your life, something even more profound awakens. Something that was quietly waiting beneath all the noise, all the confusion, all the emotional distortion you endured. In the safety of your own calm, you begin to rise into a new awareness, one anchored not in pain, but in love. Not the love you once gave away so freely, but the love you are now learning to give yourself. This is where self-love returns, not as a cliché concept, but as a lived experience. It shows up in the way you speak to yourself, in the decisions you make, in the boundaries you protect. It shows up when you look back at the treatment you accepted and realize you deserved so much better. It shows up when you no longer confuse intensity with intimacy or chaos with connection. Your healing sharpens your understanding of what love actually is and what it should never be. And with self-love comes awareness, a clarity that feels both empowering and humbling. You start recognizing patterns you owe and see ignored. You can see how the cycle formed, how you were drawn into their world, and more importantly, how you walked out of it. This awareness doesn't bring regret. It brings wisdom. It turns your story into a lesson, your pain into strength, your survival into guidance. You begin to trust yourself again, not because someone validates you, but because you've learned to validate your own truth. You understand your worth without needing anyone else to confirm it. And as this awareness grows, you begin to feel something you may not have felt in years: hope. Hope for relationships built on mutual respect. Hope for love that doesn't drain you. Hope for a life that reflects your healing rather than your wounds. With every new insight, you rise a little higher, knowing that the person you are becoming is someone the past version of you desperately needed. And now, finally, beautifully, you are becoming them. And as this awareness and self-love take root, the final transformation begins to unfold. It's the moment where survival turns into mastery, where the journey of reclaiming yourself becomes a full expression of personal power. You no longer merely exist in the aftermath of the narcissist's influence. You thrive in the light of your own truth. This is the culmination of every step you've taken. A rise into a life fully led by your choices, your boundaries, your voice. You begin to understand that power is not about control over others. It is the authority you claim over your own life. Every decision you make, every boundary you enforce, every act of self-respect becomes a declaration of this power. It's the power to say no without guilt, to walk away without fear, to prioritize your peace above all else. And unlike the influence the narcissist once held over you, this power is sustainable. It doesn't waver with their mood or crumble under their manipulation. It is anchored in your values, your truth, your self-worth. At this stage, your transformation is visible not just to yourself, but to the world. People see the quiet confidence in your posture, the steadiness in your gaze, the refusal to compromise your integrity for approval. And the narcissist, if they attempt to linger in your periphery, can only observe. They may try to stir memories or temptations, but the person they once influenced is gone, replaced by someone unshakable. This rise into self-led power is the ultimate freedom. It's the realization that leaving was not just an escape, but a gateway to becoming your highest self. You've turned survival into wisdom, pain into clarity, and loss into liberation. And in this new chapter, you don't just exist. You shine, fully present, fully alive, fully in command of the life you've reclaimed. This is your victory, your story, your power, and no one can take it from you. And now, as we come to the close of this journey together, I want you to take a moment and truly feel the weight of everything we've explored. Because this isn't just a story about someone else. It's about you, your strength, your boundaries, your courage to choose yourself over a cycle that no longer serves you. Every step we've walked through, the turning points, the panic of the narcissist, the subtle attempts to pull you back, the reclamation of your power, the rediscovery of self, the victory of silence, the awakening of awareness, and finally the rise into personal power, was meant to remind you of something essential, that your life is yours to reclaim and your peace is yours to protect. Imagine for a moment the life waiting for you on the other side of fear. Imagine a life where you are no longer tethered to manipulation, where your choices are guided by clarity and love for yourself, rather than the pull of someone else's control. Picture yourself walking into each day with confidence, knowing that your worth is not determined by anyone else's perception, that your boundaries are non-negotiable, and that your heart is free to grow in ways it was never allowed to before. And here's the most powerful truth: the same person you were before the chaos, the one who doubted, who hoped, who questioned, has not disappeared. They are there, stronger, wiser, and unapologetically aligned with the life they deserve. Every challenge you've faced, every tear you've shed, every moment you've questioned yourself has led to this, the moment you step fully into your own power. So if there's one thing I want you to carry with you after this video, let it be this: walking away was never weakness. Choosing yourself was never selfish. And the life waiting for you, the one defined by your freedom and your strength, is not just possible, it is inevitable. Stand tall, claim it, and let the world see the unstoppable force that you have become.